I'm so excited to share what has been a grueling and wonderful process of learning both sides of the coin, the loving relationship and the abusive relationship. I remember coming out of my abusive relationship and I watched so many videos just to validate myself, just to check off that internal list of was I wrong or was I right, you know? And now I have my own to put together, but I want to combine the abusive in comparison to the loving relationship just to further emphasize how it's not something to settle for. It is not something to tolerate. It's not something to convince yourself is all you're worth receiving. I feel incredibly fortunate to have come out of multiple relationships that had varying levels of neglect, and to be in the one that I'm in now that enables me to share this information with you. So I have here a little Venn diagram, which will just be probably most of what we go through in relation to loving and abusive partnerships. If you grew up with a parent or both parents who were continually unable to meet your needs emotionally, that means you do not have a very good standard to now hold your romantic partners to. And it's not your fault, but it's something that you have to fix, and you deserve to fix for yourself, because without fixing it, you might continue the pattern. And you're worth breaking the pattern. You deserve love. Love in this lifetime. So let's start with probably my least favorite thing that ever happened in an emotionally abusive relationship, and that is conflicts. Conflicts hurt so bad when you are trying to resolve them with someone who does not want to participate in resolving a conflict. They just want to misunderstand you until you give up or give in to their perception of things, which is most likely a self-victimizing one in which you are the villain. And we can't see both people's perspectives for the truth and the whole of the situation that they are. In the abusive partnership, conflicts will not be met with an openness or a patience to understand you. Your partner probably gets instantly and immediately defensive at merely mentioning your feelings. And therefore your voice is told to quieten down, and you're told to silence yourself. You can see how this perpetuates a cycle of constantly settling for the reality and for the lack of love and attention you're receiving. And defensiveness does not always look like name-calling. It doesn't always look like such stark verbal abuse. That's why I was caught in the pattern of wondering for so long if I was being verbally abused or not, because I thought, and my partner insisted, that that would require them to use swear words, to use very concrete insults. But no, instead they will attack insidiously. They will go to the root of your insecurities, which they've learned from being in relationship with you, from allowing yourself to be vulnerable with them. They have picked up on a few of your insecurities, and they'll use them to question you and get you to question yourself. So you question your entire perception of the situation, and that's why you feel like you have to watch YouTube videos about this to begin with, because you've been confused. Gaslit. Yeah. I said it, you've been gaslit. Conflict is normal and natural in human nature and in relationship to each other. But if conflicts constantly become fights, then that's a problem, and that means that one or two people are selfishly devoted to their own personal victimization, which means not being able to hear the other person's perception, not being able to validate the other person's experience, feelings, or account of the conflict. This abusive pattern to silence you will also contain the raising of their voice, the recounting of events, and it has to be their way, it has to be their perception of it. Yours isn't allowed to be correct. Yours is too tainted by your insecurities, conveniently, since their perspective is often one of self-victimization, where they are the victim, you're the perpetrator. That's why they're allowed to act out. But what's actually happening is that you're just silenced. And you allow them to keep running this perpetual cycle of lying to your face and teaching you how to lie to yourself in turn. Now, in a loving conflict, you'll find that the person you're with wants to understand you because they agreed to be with you and they see you as somebody that they trust. And because they trust you, they're able to explain themselves in a way that isn't completely defensive and invalidating. The way that they'll explain themselves is still from their point of view, except for this time it won't be shouting over you. It will be in an effort to understand you as well, and it will include space for you to comment afterwards and for you to share yourself afterwards, all in an attempt to reach a solution for you both, because you actually want to get back to enjoying each other and enjoying each other's company. Now, instead of using your insecurities as fuel to the fire to perpetuate your confusion and your own questioning of yourself, they have also picked up and learned about your insecurities. But a loving partner will acknowledge them and assure you that these insecurities are not something that will scare them away, keep you apart. They'll validate your reality of experience with your insecurities, but they won't perpetuate the same shame and guilt you feel for having them in the first place. For example, in my abusive relationship, I shared financial insecurities with that partner, and they used them against me in multiple cases so that I was made to look selfish, I was made to look like a failure, I was made to feel so much shame for even having financial insecurities in the first place. And I mean, look around. Is that something anyone should feel shame for? In my loving relationship, my financial insecurities are met with comfort. It's never brought up in a fight. It's never brought up to make me feel bad about something. The only time they're brought up is when I'm feeling insecure about them, and when it's actually productive that I have somebody, a loving partner, to communicate to about them, and just to get it off of my chest, to receive some encouragement and some comfort, and the opposite of what I was experiencing in my abusive relationship. Your loving partner is also always open to constructively communicating through conflict. They have traits of patience and understanding and empathy. They do not weaponize empathy. They feel it for you, and you feel it for them. Often in my abusive relationship, my partner weaponized empathy in situations where I would bring up a feeling that I had or a problem that I had, and immediately I was made to feel like I never listened to them, because now is the time that they're ready to talk about their resentments and things that they've been keeping under the surface. Weaponizing my vulnerability and turning the tables at an inappropriate moment to discuss their problems with me, which I hadn't been made aware of ever before. Once again, this left me feeling absolutely unheard and silenced, and afraid to bring up my feelings ever again. Another important aspect to the comparison of loving and abusive relationships is the difference you feel between emotional security and emotional insecurity. Emotional security will feel stable in a loving relationship because it's something that is constantly maintained. It's something that's respected by both parties. You both understand that you're human, that there'll be different kinds of days, that there'll be different kinds of moments in each day. And a negative feeling or a sad experience or a misunderstanding does not have to ruin the day. This is something I experienced. It felt like running on a hamster wheel. It was Groundhog Day every day, waking up wondering, is it going to be a good day, or is it going to be a day where we have a massive fight out of nowhere and they explode on me and I never saw it coming? This is a massive red flag. If you feel like having a good day is never easy anymore and somehow completely up to you, meanwhile, your partner's anger is completely unpredictable and often explosive, something that you will be blamed for. If you feel like you have to keep them happy, you are walking on eggshells. In a loving partnership, it's not about keeping them happy in order to have a good day. They're happy because they're with you. They're also sad because they experience other things. They go through the ups and downs of life, and you both accept this as the natural human experience. In my loving relationship, I'm so happy to learn and experience that every day is allowed to be a combination of emotions. No day is automatically ruined by negative ones, because we both know how to deal with and process them and communicate them to each other. With my boyfriend now, I can say I'm feeling irritated, I can say I'm feeling anxious, and it's not something that he will take personally. It is not something that will be turned and used against me. It's not something that will make him bring up my other insecurities to invalidate the way I'm feeling. No. It's just a way to communicate that, hey, maybe I'm not gonna sound thrilled right now, maybe I need to take a few moments to myself. And it helps us get along better. It helps us return back to that emotional security that we maintain through love in our relationship. Reading from my Venn diagram, you often feel as though you have disappointed them just for being human and not the perfect version of yourself they agreed to be with in the beginning of your relationship. And then you blame yourself because maybe you falsely advertised to them who you were, just because, we all go through that beginning stage in a relationship where we don't show our darkest shadow. We don't show how easily we can get irritated sometimes, or how often we feel a little upset. And now that we've been together for a while and these things are being uncovered, you feel like you're disappointing them. I felt like that. I felt like I knew I had to be better for them. I knew I had to absolutely annihilate all my insecurities so they'd never be brought up in a fight again, so that I couldn't be blamed for being imperfect. If you feel that way, you are not with someone who understands how to accept another human being. Unconditional love, in my experience, is about progressively feeling more comfortable with your partner through the time that you've spent getting to know each other, through the time that you've shared together, because you've experienced different seasons of life with them and they've stayed there with you. They've been there for you through it all. So in my past relationship, I felt a need to constantly hide any negative feelings I was ever feeling, and I'm a very anxious person. So that was a very, very hard, horrible thing to try to do for the sake of somebody else. Now I am the same person in my present relationship, and I experience this kind of unconditional love, no matter what state I'm currently in, no matter how anxious I'm feeling, because a loving partner knows that the only thing you need when you're irritated, upset, is their patience and their love for you. A patient person is able to ask or evaluate the situation to see maybe you need comfort or maybe you need space. They feel comfortable with you because you both know how to communicate in times like this. Alright, so now that we've talked about a lot of the key differences and how an emotionally abusive or a loving partner will show up, now I just want to acknowledge why we get these two confused in the first place. And it goes back to not having that ingrained golden standard of how we should be treated and the love that we actually do deserve. Because in both of these relationships, we'll often experience the following: words of affection and praise. Now, what human does not hope for moments of validation? Now, the difference here is that one is continually validating. It doesn't mean always just agreeing and conforming to your perception, but it means accepting it and moving past it to find a solution and common ground, rather than just completely invalidating you. There will also be moments of physical validation and intimacy in both, and that's something we can get hooked on. That's something that a lot of humans crave, and it's actually one of our needs. To feel close to somebody else, to feel accepted by someone else. And if we haven't experienced unconditional love, because so many people have not had the privilege of experiencing unconditional love, especially in childhood, we are even more likely to accept less. Of course we are. We'll accept whatever we can get. We just want to feel accepted in some capacity when we felt so rejected and so abandoned for so much of our lives. There may also be common interests or traits between you that bring you together as a couple. Now, that's just natural. So many people have things in common with each other because we're all people, aren't we? But does that mean that it's enough to stay together to convince yourself that you should be with them for the rest of your life? No, especially if they are hurting you and making you question yourself every day. And then, of course, my last point that I want to make is that you may feel love for them. You'll love them, regardless of if they're abusive or loving to you in return. And don't blame yourself for loving them. You have love in your heart. You've always wanted somewhere to put it. You've given it to the wrong person temporarily. You can revoke it slowly over time and find a healthy outlet for it, whether that be another relationship or your passions, and especially yourself. You will find a way to reclaim that love and to pour it back into things that serve you. So thank you. Thank you for taking this time with me to have this conversation, to talk it out, because I know these things are confusing as hell. And I question myself. You go back and forth with yourself in your head, mental gymnastics all day long about whether it's all you or it's them that's in the wrong. Because you're hurt. Who is to blame? And it's so easy to blame ourselves when that's all we've been taught. And we have a lot of shame around it. There's so much shame around opening up this conversation. Sometimes it doesn't feel safe at all to do so in the first place. So it's important that you reach out in some capacity, and I'm happy if you did today. I'm very, very happy for you and so proud of you. You can make it out of this cycle. You are a loving, loving soul, and you deserve to find the one that loves you in return. And for now, you have to take action whenever possible, in whatever capacity you can, to return that love back to yourself. Now I'm going to share a poem that I wrote coming out of my abusive relationship. I'm starting to wonder if falling this hard would leave me with nothing under the surface. It's getting worse. Is it worth this much hurt? This must be the first time I trust this much. 'Cause I trusted you, beat me black and blue in my mind. There was nothing better than being alone at the end of the night with you on the phone, it's true. I was living with strangers. I was ready to make a lover out of you. You made it easier to believe that finally someone wouldn't leave. Now I can't believe a word you say anymore. How could a flower combat 2 hours of torturous screaming? I would never believe it if you told me I'd accept this treatment. But from you it was love. So it was all I could ask for and all I could dream of. And it was all that I got. And you got your way with me. And every day would be broken eggshells and shattering glass on the floor. Sometimes you would get so mad I had no idea what for. But I'd convince myself that it just wasn't you, it was somehow my fault, and I just never knew how to keep you happy. That version of you, the child I knew, with the twinkle in his eyes. There was barely a difference between them and the stars in the sky. It's crazy how, it's insanity, how I loved you into someone you could never be. Do not question and shame yourself for being human any longer. You are loved and you are made of love. And I love you. Thank you for watching.